No game for the Dodgers, so that means mailbag. We're talking all stars. We're talking all star hats. We're talking trade deadline as always. Talking bullpen and a bunch of other things that you guys asked. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb and they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, which is the exclusive club of people that listen to us every day, you can make that easy on yourself by subscribing in each or both of those places and get notified when our new episodes are up, which is every weekday morning, every Monday through Friday. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio, and that's my co-host, Jeff Snider. And we are both lifelong Dodgers fans that have covered the team, have been in the press box, been in the locker room, been all over Dodger Stadium, been to a lot of places that watch the Dodgers and watched a lot of Dodger games. So we're not quite insiders, but we're here to bring you what we think is the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. And that's what we're here to do. So, like I said, no game. So we're going to take mailbag questions, which is always great. The Dodgers were active on Thursday night, though. It was the Blue Diamond Gala, I believe it's called. A lot of Dodgers in outfits. I only saw a couple outfits that I actually really liked. A lot of the guys seemed like misses this year.
Jason Hayward looked great.
Yeah.
That like a pink suit with a t-shirt under it. Jason Hayward, he's got the kind of body that could look good in anything. Miguel Rojas, couldn't tell if he was just wearing a suit coat without a shirt or just the deepest V-neck in the history of the world. Maybe it was a vest without a shirt. I don't know. It was if he had cleavage, he would have been showing a lot of it. But other than that, yeah, nothing. I thought Freddie's suit looked nice. Mookie always looks good no matter what he's wearing. Yancy Almonte looked pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, simple is better. Johnny DeLuca looked pretty cool in the white, and then Bobby Miller went all black. Bobby Miller is just a smooth looking dude when he keeps it simple, but he has enough flair to make it work. So
I thought Chris and Mary Taylor looked awesome too. Very like both of them are very kind of understated looks, but yeah, I thought they looked really good too.
yeah, we've seen Chris Taylor grow up in our eyes. He used to be the single one at all these events, and now he's married and having a kid, and doesn't have to come by himself anymore.
Little Christopher's growing up.
Yeah. But like I mentioned, mailbag episode, we put out a call for questions. We got some questions before that. We got some questions when we put out the call, but we'll just jump right into it. The first one we'll talk about is from our buddy Brandon Johnson at Brandon John 442. He says, "Is there any world where the Dodgers would sign Shohei Ohtani, but also try to bring back JD Martinez?"
I don't think so. JD Martinez wasn't a good outfielder even back when he was young, and now he's not young anymore. I think the Dodgers did have to put JD in the outfield the other day briefly. Luckily, it didn't really come into play. I just think JD's days of playing the field are behind him, and Shohei has never played the field in his big league career. I'm sure he could. I'm sure he could be a solid outfielder. He's extremely athletic. But Terrence Gore was extremely athletic and terrible outfielder. And so, there's no guarantee that Shohei could be a good outfielder. I think if Shohei was available at the trade deadline this year, they would figure out a way to make Shohei and JD coexist on the roster by making them take turns playing the outfield or something. But I have a hard time seeing them actually pursuing both guys as free agents next offseason.
Yeah, I think Otani's played like 8 innings of outfield with the Angels, but nothing of value there. But I mean, he did play over in Japan. I'm sure he'd be fine, but I don't think that's something you want, especially, he pitches 100 games. You don't want him in the outfield where potentially he could throw the ball another 20, 30 times if every ball was hit to him or a bunch of balls were hit his way. So yeah, I don't see it happening. I think of like Pujols was kind of an honorary. Well, he was necessary for a little bit, but then after that, just kind of became like pinch hitter, play every once in a while type deal. But at least he could play first base passably. And I'm sure JD Martinez could do that too. But the Dodgers have Freddie Freeman, so they don't really need anybody to play first base. So yeah, I don't think they'd handicap the roster by having somebody that's really just there to hit. Maybe can play defense once a week if they really wanted him to, but probably wouldn't want him to anyways.
Yeah. All right, next question. This one we got in our DMs from Mark at Tweets by Mark D. He says, first time, long time. Thanks, Mark. Who are your favorite current people to hear call Dodger games? I really like Joe Davis for the TV broadcasts and Rick Monday and Charlie Steiner for the radio broadcasts. I also generally dislike most of the national broadcast announcers, but maybe that's just the homer in me. Ha ha. Ha ha indeed, Mark. What do you think, Vince?
Yeah, national broadcasts, I usually don't even have the sound on anyways. And, I don't think you're ever really going to like a national broadcast because they're not talking about your team with the most knowledge. And, not that, Joe Davis and Oro and pretty much everyone with the Dodgers does a pretty decent job of not, fully falling into the homer, even though they are, employed by the team. And maybe Don Trails goes a little bit into that and cheering as things are going on. But, Don Trail's fun. He's one of those guys you like. Obviously, Joe Davis and Oro, that's always a classic. Steven Nelson, a little bit of bias. He's a friend of mine. I used to work with him, former coworker. But from what I've heard of the games he's been on, I don't have an issue. I know he didn't have a spring. He got into the mix a little late. So I talked to him the other day, and he was kind of mentioning how he's still figuring his way out. But off this question, I don't know if you saw Eric Stevens' tweet the other day with records from the broadcast duos. Joe and Oro are 12 and 13, and then after that, everyone's kind of around 5. No one's really too high or too low, below 500. I know Steven Nelson has an overall winning percentage. Joe Davis, I think, is overall winning percentage when you add everyone else in. But that was some pretty good research there by Eric Stevens.
Yeah, it was definitely in keeping with Eric's brand. Definitely the kind of thing Eric would track. For me, the broadcasters, all of the Dodgers TV broadcasters, I at least like. I obviously Joe and Oral, I love. They're the classic team. I really like Eric Karros. I think he has a lot of good hitting insight. I loved the other night. You probably didn't see this because you were at the game, Vince, on Tuesday night when Caleb Ferguson was facing Shohei Ohtani in the 8th inning, and Ohtani was battling and everything. And Ferguson tried to throw him a slider, tried to get him to chase. And Karros said, throw that fastball up and in again. You're going to get a swing and miss. And next pitch, Ferguson threw the fastball up and in, got the swing and miss. I feel like Karros has a little bit of that, the Tony Romo quality of like really knows the game and can kind of, almost predict what's going to happen sometimes, really good at explaining things. And I like to have the hitter's point of view because of Oral and Dontrell both being pitchers. So I like Karros a lot. Dontrell, I would listen to him do anything. I think he is so much fun to listen to. My favorite thing, a game you and I were both at, I don't know if you've watched, I assume you've seen the highlights, Vince, of Gavin Stone's Major League debut, the game that ended with the Max Muncy Grand Slam. And Joe Davis is calling the Grand Slam, and Dontrell's just giggling in the background. It's one of my favorite things. Radio broadcasts, I love Charlie Steiner's voice. But I cannot stand the fact that he's terrible at explaining what's happening in the game, because that's what I'm looking for in a play-by-play announcer. So while Charlie is very pleasant to listen to, I don't actually enjoy listening to games he's calling. I think Tim Neverett is very, very good at calling a game. I don't necessarily like his voice as much as Charlie's, but it's not a bad voice, and he's very good at what he does. Rick Monday is, when he's not being a grumpy old man, I really enjoy him. He obviously knows baseball really well. He's Dodger history, a lot to like about Rick Monday, but he just gets into his grumpy old man stuff sometimes, especially with openers. He just makes the same points about pitchers and their routines and stuff. And it's like, look, it's the Rays that the Dodgers are playing right now. And I think they might know what they're doing. They have the best record in baseball. Maybe they've figured out something about using an opener. Maybe they've considered these things you keep bringing up. So I don't know. But yeah, and then national broadcasters, Wayne Randazzo, I think, is very good at his job. It's the Apple broadcasts, and he does a really good job as a play-by-play guy. He's got a little bit of a Bob Costas voice to him. Yeah, I think he's pretty good. Other than that, obviously I don't need to mention John Smoltz. We all know how everybody feels about him. So
yeah. We got more questions on the way, so that's what's on tap. So make sure you keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball season's in full swing. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to join today. If you were to head to FanDuel and wanted to make a bet, there's good bets to make. You can make same game parlay bets, which are a bunch of things that happen in the same game. Freddie Freeman getting a hit's a pretty good one to make on a almost everyday basis. If you combine him with maybe Mookie, that's a bet that should be happening every so often, or more often than not. If you want to get into some future bets, you can put some money down on the Dodgers to end up still winning the NL West. That's probably some good money. I know they're still the betting favorites in most places, so you won't make as much money. But if they fall a little bit more, maybe people won't like them anymore. But either way, don't miss your chance to side get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Let's go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. Okay. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to check us out wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. You can also check us out on SiriusXM or the SXM app if you search Locked On Dodgers. That's also how you can listen to the home broadcast for any Dodger game. SiriusXM or the SXM app, search Dodgers, and you can listen to the home broadcast. All right, Jeff, let's get back into these questions, and we'll take one that will lead us into another question. But the first question comes from at J Smith 0808. He says, last year, LA had one of the best All-Star Game hats in recent memory. In regards to this year's caps just released, are you on base or off base, as Mookie would say, on them, and why? Off base, on base comes from Mookie's show that he does, where on base means you're good with something, off base means you're not good with it.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I think I'm both, because I think the ones that are team colors, those are for batting practice and for the home run derby, all that stuff the day before activities. I think those look very good. The patch on the right side is big, but not in a bad way. And it's, team colors. It matches the color scheme. I think it looks really nice. I look at that hat and I think that's a hat I might actually buy. Kind of when it was in Cleveland a few years ago, I bought that one. It had the guitar on the side and white pinstripes down the sides. I like that one. Me and my two sons all got that hat. This one I could definitely see myself buying. The ones that are, how would you describe that color, Vince? The game day hats. They are like a very muted mint green, maybe.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it, maybe.
And I guess
it says powder ash is what they're called.
Powder ash. Okay, that means absolutely nothing to anybody. If you haven't seen them, you got to look at them. And for me, it's got the LA logo on it, so it's awesome. Other than that, I think it's ugly, and I wish that Major League Baseball would go back to players wearing their own team uniforms in the All-Star game like they did every year up until a couple years ago, because that's better.
Yeah, I'm off base. Well, mainly because not a big patch guy, especially when it takes up half the side of the hat. I don't mind the color of the non-traditional color ones, but like Seattle has one of the best color schemes in baseball to me, like the teal and the navy blue. The fact that it's not teal or navy blue is just, doesn't make sense to me. So I'm off base on them. Like I said, that color in general, not terrible, but it just doesn't make sense, especially when you have the neon and navy blue on the side of the hat connected to the All-Star Game logo.
Yeah, and there's no reason to buy a Dodger hat in that color. Like it's not a bad looking hat. It's just generic and boring. And so I don't see why anybody would actually buy that Dodger hat. So, all right, next question. I like this one from Michael at Whitman 7. He says, if you could only keep 2 out of Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, and Dustin May for next season, who are you keeping? And for purposes of this question, I assume he means only 2 are staying in the organization. The other 2 you're trading or shipping off or whatever.
Yeah. Well, Bobby Miller's one. I've been a fan of Bobby Miller since they drafted him. I've been on the Bobby Miller train, since then. And the fact that he's, proven to be good, or at least have the stuff to be able to be good on a consistent basis, it would seem like makes sense there. After that, it's hard because he might be on the precipice of another surgery potentially, or maybe he's always on that precipice. But I'm just a big Dustin May fan, and the fact that he's already proven it in the major leagues is a big part of that. And the fact that he's doing what he was supposed to do, and then he ended up getting hurt, losing the season to Tommy John. Who knows what's going to happen this season? But I still think I would trust. Even it sucks as if he came back and at least they had a full season and then got hurt again. You'd be like, all right, well, if you give you every other season, maybe it's not terrible. But Sheehan had a good start. We'll see what he does Friday. But again, he wasn't expected to be anybody ridiculously high up there. And then same with Stone. And Stone, it's not a matter of what he's done this season, just a matter of he's not higher than the other 2 in my head.
Yeah, I agree with you that Bobby Miller's number 1. I have a really hard time because I can make a strong case for any of the other 3 as the second guy to keep. I really am still really high on Gavin Stone. I know he's been terrible in the big leagues this year, and he hasn't been very good in the minor leagues either. But I do think that Gavin Stone is going to be a very good major league pitcher. And so but Dustin May has already been a very good major league pitcher, and it's really just about health. If you could guarantee health, I think Dustin May and Bobby Miller are the easy 2 answers. I think they have the best stuff of the 4. And, but that probably also means they have the highest injury risk of the 4. And so, it's hard to know. And Sheehan, I don't know. I think he's 4th for me, even though, really, when I said I like this question, what I mean is I hate this question, but in a good way. Yeah, I'm very glad that we don't have to make this choice, so I don't have to feel bad putting Sheehan 4th on the list. But I think I'd go Miller, May, Stone, Sheehan in that order.
Yeah, so we're on the same page. All right, let's take one more real quick. Staying on the pitching topic, from our buddy Kevin at Blue Goon 82. He says, let's say Ohtani signs elsewhere. Would you overpay for Julio Urias in a weak free agent market, even though he's more of a 2 than an ace, or save the money for someone else down the
line? And I don't really think of Julio as being a 2 more than an ace. I think of him, he's either an ace or he's less than a 2. And that kind of depends on what, right now, the last time we saw Julio on a mound, he looked terrible and then he got hurt. And so I have no idea what to expect from Julio when he comes back. I'm really, really hoping that him looking terrible in that last start was because of the injury. And it just was nagging or something. I don't think the Dodgers are, Kevin asked if we'd be okay with overpaying for Julio. I don't think the Dodgers are in the overpaying business, and it's not so much about saving money for somebody else. I think it comes down to the years on Julio.
Well, he says, would you overpay, not the Dodgers?
Yeah. And I like the way the Dodgers do business. So I think I would treat myself the same way Andrew Friedman. Basically, I'm saying I'm Andrew Friedman. That's what I'm getting at. And I'm his burner. But no, I think that if Julio wanted to come back for a 5-year contract, I'd be happy with overpaying a little bit per year. Getting Julio. I'm not interested in Julio as a 34-year-old, but a 30, 31, 32-year-old Julio, I'd be okay with to get his peak years if he is healthy and effective the rest of this season.
I think I'm the opposite on that. If he wants 200 mil, I'll give him 200 mil for 10 years and then just deal with, in 5 years, 20 mil a year. Probably won't be much anyways. Noah Syndergaard made 14 mil this year. So, but yeah, I don't think the way premium pitchers have gotten paid the last few years, I don't think I would pay that for Julio. And I love Julio and, Mexican, all the connections are there. But for me, it's just like it's the stuff. And, we see Kershaw dominate without that stuff. He's not, Kershaw doesn't throw mid to high 90s anymore or anything else. But Clayton Kershaw is, once in a generation talent. Julio, it can be that and has been really, really good. Like, no knock on him. But, you don't necessarily know how the stuff will continue to play up. And even this season was a mix. Like, this season was a mixed bag. We'll see how he comes back. But yeah, I don't think I would, be breaking any banks to pay him. And from what we've seen the last few years, like Garrett Cole got paid, some of these other, Strasburg a few years ago got paid. That was a bad one. But like other than that, like other guys that have been either good or even Cy Young winners or contenders, they haven't been getting paid like ridiculously. Kevin Gausman, Robbie Ray, like some of those guys were getting 20, 25 million a year. Rodon maybe got overpaid for a little bit last year, and he hasn't even thrown a pitch this year. But I don't think those guys, you can get a decent quality starting pitcher and not have to, pay, people were saying 200, 250 million. I don't think it's going to be that high.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, 6 years at 25 million a year or so for Julio. That's 150 million bucks. I think, and I'd be totally cool with that, assuming that he is healthy and effective this year. But yeah, you have me second guessing myself. Maybe because Julio does have experience pitching out of the bullpen, so he could maybe transition to the bullpen role, even if he didn't have what it takes to be a starter. Maybe I'm not as opposed to a long-term deal for him because he's not necessarily going to lock them into a rotation spot, maybe.
Yeah. We got more questions, couple more, but we're going to take a quick break. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Thank you for being an everydayer. If you're an everydayer, thank you for listening. If you're listening right now, make sure to subscribe wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And make sure to check out SiriusXM or the SXM app. If you want to listen to the home broadcast for any Dodger game, all you got to do is search Dodgers on SiriusXM or the SXM app. You can also listen to us on there if you search Locked On Dodgers. All right, we got a couple more questions. One more, and then a discussion that we have. This one comes from Pat Dwyer at the real PJ Dwyer. He says, have the bullpen struggles, yesterday notwithstanding, been systemic or individual? For instance, could any of the rule changes be changing the equation enough that the, quote, prior lab needs to recalibrate in some way?
I don't know about systemic. I think, I guess if it's between those two, I think I would say with individual, but I do think the rule changes might be coming into play. Like we've talked for 3 years now about how Brusdar Graterol needs to strike more guys out. And I think without the shift, maybe that is a bigger deal this year. It's kind of funny. Graterol's so interesting because his ERA still looks really good, but that's because he's got 500 runs allowed that were really all his fault. And so, he hasn't pitched nearly as well as his ERA shows, and he doesn't need to strike out more guys. And so I think some of this stuff when guys aren't getting the strikeouts, I think it is harder to be effective because of the shift being banned. Maybe some of the base running rule changes, like the Dodgers in general have been terrible at holding runners, and I'm sure the bullpen is part of that. I don't know for sure. I can't think of anybody like Kenley Jansen or Blake Trinan or Noah Syndergaard in the bullpen who they've just been running wild on. But, really the shift would be the big thing. And I do think some of these guys who aren't getting as many strikeouts as they should, that could be affecting them.
I think the answer is a little both because, like, the system has affected guys, but individually they all might be affected by something different. Or like you mentioned, Graterol with the shift might be something. Some guys maybe with holding runners on. Vesia is one we know that the pitch clock bothered him. Dave Roberts mentioned that. I don't know if any of that. I haven't seen like Graterol the first couple of times of the season. I think the pitch clock. I think he was speeding himself up a little bit too much. He didn't realize that you still have time to do what you need to do. But I don't think that's been an issue recently. I don't think overall it's a systemic issue, but I think within that system, every individual has had some kind of issue with what's happened. So, but again, I think it's been, and they talked about it the other day, how they haven't, Evan Phillips mentioned how they, and Ferguson and everybody, how they had a talk. There was not really like, Jansen was the leader of the bullpen for a while, and regardless of how he was pitching, he was still looked up to as that guy, And then I don't remember if it was Phillips or Ferguson or whoever mentioned David Price the last couple of years. Maybe they didn't have that person, they didn't have that somebody to look up to. I don't think it's obviously they mentioned David Price, so it's not a matter of like closer and everybody else, and it's just a matter of like somebody being there. And maybe they weren't talking about it, and everyone's just kind of trying to work on their own things. And not that talking is going to fix it, but it worked the last 2 days, so maybe it is going to fix it.
Yeah, and I should make an Eric Stevens style spreadsheet about Bruzar's performance when his hair is braided and when it's long and flowing. We'll see if I get to that this weekend.
Yeah. All right. Last thing, real quick. All-star voting phase 1 is over. The Dodgers have 4 players that may be all-star starters: Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, JD Martinez, and Will Smith. Mookie Betts was second in overall voting for outfielders. Ronald Acuna was number 1, so he's automatically voted into the All-Star game. So, but Mookie had a comfortable enough lead to where I think he's going to get in anyways. Freddie Freeman was first. Did he finish first? I know him and Olsen got close toward the end, but he finished first in overall voting. And then JD Martinez finished first and Will Smith finished second. So,
yeah, and I think it's safe to say that all 4 of those guys are going to be on the team. It's just a question of whether they're starting. And then Evan Phillips is probably going to be on the team, and Clayton Kershaw is almost surely going to be on the team. And Vince, I was wondering, is there a chance that we see Kershaw start the All-Star game for the second straight year after not doing it so far in his career until last year? Last year, he was deserving, but probably not the most deserving in the league. It was more of a, well, it's at Dodger Stadium, it's a career honor, all of that. This year, I mean, he's third in the league in ERA. He's tied for the league lead in wins. He's second or third in strikeouts. He is legitimately a candidate to start the All-Star game. And honestly, if you do want to go to, like last year, it was like, well, he's never started an All-Star game. He's this Hall of Fame pitcher who's never started one. Well, that's not that much better an argument than he's this Hall of Famer. He's only started one All-Star game. I think you could still go with the career honor thing and the fact that he deserves it this year. I don't hate the idea of Kershaw starting the All-Star game again.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the National League, you don't have, like, if you ask me who should start the National League All-Star game, Kershaw would be an answer because I know he's been good, but then you think about like, oh wait, who should start the National League All-Star game? And Marcus Stroman's the leader in ERA, but
Bryce Elder's second. Those are the only 2 guys ahead of Kershaw. It's like Bryce Elder is not starting the All-Star game.
Yeah, you look at top 10, you go Stroman, Elder, Kershaw, Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Michael Wacha, Alex Cobb, Logan Webb, Blake Snell, Drew Smyly. None of those guys are other than Kershaw. Kershaw, Gallen, only because he's been good for a few years now. Nobody else is really like, oh yeah, that guy should start the All-Star game. And so yeah, it makes sense for him to be that guy, assuming he has 1 or 2 more starts, or maybe 3 that are high quality starts. Spencer Strider has a lot of strikeouts, but he's gotten roughed up a few times. Like, you really think about it, like Sandy Alcantara, who was coming off the Cy Young, he hasn't been that good this year. So there's not really anybody that stands out. So if it has to be someone, why not Kershaw? And he did good last year in his innings. So
yeah, he's got my vote. I would guess it's Stroman, though. That's my guess.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe he'll implode these next couple of starts and
give way to Kershaw.
Give way to Kershaw. Yeah. All right, Jeff. That's all the questions. Thank you all guys for submitting all those questions. We appreciate it as always. You got anything else you want to add, Jeff?
No, I think that's good.
Dodgers take on the Astros this weekend. It is not the pitching matchups you would have thought. The Astros are pitching, I think, 2 guys I never heard of, and Hunter Brown, who's a good rookie. The Dodgers are starting 2 rookies and Tony Gonsolin, so a little bit different look than years past for Dodgers Astros. But either way, I'm sure Dodger Stadium will be a rocking. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Make sure to check us out wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Subscribe and become an everydayer. It's the easiest club to join. All you got to do is listen to us every single day. Tell your friends and family about us. Remember, SiriusXM, SXM app. You can listen to the home broadcast for every Dodger game. Just search Dodgers. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincent91. DMs are always open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, tell your smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers, I remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you on Monday.